posted on our website, And as some of you may know, this is only made available to our membership, the webinar is. Excuse me, and we stick to the same time each month. So not everybody can make it, but we treat this as our recording studio session, and then it'll be up on the website where the sort of the wider audience can get to it. Andreas, our speaker, Andreas Breuer, he's with WestNetx GmbH. Easy for you to say, Andreas. He is the head of hydrogen activities there, and he's got, again, it's a sort of frontier stuff. He is responsible for research and development projects in hydrogen, and that means looking at sort of the latest trends and trying to find ways to operationalize them, get them developed and get them implemented. So he's sort of just the kind of brain that we love to have join the family. And he's been working with us now for some time, and we're very grateful. I'm moving quickly. The format will be the usual one. Andreas will speak for about 20 minutes. Scott will then step in with and manage a Q&A session and the discussion. We will end at I guess 1 o'clock my time on the hour, and we know everybody's got other things to get to, so we try to be very precise about that. And I think with that, by way of introduction, I can now get out of the way and hand the microphone over to Andreas to get us steeped in the hydrogen challenge. Andreas,
thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen. So what I'd like to discuss with you today is the possibilities around hydrogen, where the technology, but also coming from a business perspective, where we are right now and what we can do, but also what we are not going to do immediately, what has to be developed during the next years. And therefore, I'm going to show you the Lighthouse project, at least out of my impression, the Lighthouse project around hydrogen in rural areas where you can find distribution grids. Why are we going to deal with hydrogen? You all know that we have a situation where we have electricity grids, heat grids, we have natural gas grids. On the other hand, we have the climate targets, which in our case, and especially in Germany, means that we will have in 2045 a hard stop for natural gas. And having a look at three different segments for the usage of gas, which is industry, mobility, but also then private household buildings, all are using gas, but also in future, there is a need for some of these customers to use gas also, which means they need an alternative regarding natural gas. There's a trend, of course, to electrify as much as possible, but indeed, especially if you have a look at the heating market, if you have a look at industry, there will be a need for gas also in future. And if we take in consideration that we have the climate goals, there's a need also and a strong will to reduce CO2, then hydrogen comes into the game. Hydrogen has several advantages. Of course, hydrogen is very flexible to use. It's completely comparable to natural gas. We have an existing infrastructure, we have existing applications, we can use storage. You can also transport hydrogen, which is not always and not for a longer period of time the case if we consider electricity. So it's really a good medium, a source to have a long time storage. It's reliable. We have nearly endless sources regarding hydrogen. and it's climate neutral. Regarding the condition to burn natural gas and compare that with hydrogen, it's also very similar. And if we talk about or think about the operational guys, they are used to deal with natural gas. And if we are going to shift to hydrogen in future, it will be pretty similar. So all these are really great advantages in order to exchange natural gas towards hydrogen. There are different colors that's coming from a source from Planet A, and maybe you heard about these colors. Regarding the climate goals and the aim to become CO2 neutral, we are only talking about the green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is produced using electrolysis. Therefore, you need green electricity coming from renewables, and you need water. The outcome from electrolysis is green hydrogen because it is produced out of renewable energy, oxygen, and heat. And at that point in time, think about the highest level to use electrolysis will be if you can use the green hydrogen, if you can use the oxygen, and if you can use the heat. And this I will show you later on in the project. This is the attempt also we have. For example, oxygen can be used in the wastewater treatment. Time being, industry, for example, is using gray hydrogen, so hydrogen produced out of natural gas. If you're using nuclear electricity, it will be pink hydrogen. In our case, in our project, there's also an attempt to use the pyrolysis process, which is turquoise hydrogen, that we are using waste which has a certain amount or degree of ammonia included in order to produce hydrogen. So there's a waste bunch of different colors, but if we want to take it serious with the climate goals, we are only talking about green hydrogen. Time being, several governments are discussing the color of hydrogen, also in Germany. And it might be the case that there will be a decision for a certain time to ramp up the whole hydrogen market, that also other colors will be allowed to use in order to use CO2, for example, blue or turquoise. In the case of Germany, pink hydrogen will be not allowed because we switched off all our nuclear power plants. So what we did is look for a region where there will be prospectively in the future a high demand of hydrogen. And this we found in Sauerland, which is a region where you can find mid-sized industry, global leaders in industries, several or different industry segments like automotive, chemistry, paper, steel, whatever you like. It's out of history, it's situated in that area. And there are also these are also industry companies who are using burner technology today, which means that for their production process, they need high temperatures. High temperatures in that case means above 700 degrees centigrade. So what they are doing, they have burning chambers or burners where they introduce natural gas, and then out of the burning process of natural gas, they can reach, and only by that, they can reach these high temperatures. There's not an option to electrify this process. It will be much too expensive, and in some cases, if it's above 1,000 degrees centigrade, you cannot reach it with the electrification process. So these companies are doomed to have a gas also in future, which they can burn in order to reach their temperatures. The aim of this project is to show end to end the entire whole complete value chain, whatever has to do with a hydrogen market, which is not technology only, but also business-wise, economics, and also regarding the certification process when you're using hydrogen, to show that in one place in order to prepare or to have a blueprint for industry, for the heating market, and also for mobility. Because you will find also in your countries, you will find some areas which are pretty similar to what we have here in Sauerland. And therefore, we were chasing funding on national level. And this gives you this timeline here. The initial idea is more than 10 years old. The situation in Germany is that we started building up natural gas infrastructure, the pipeline systems, decades ago. And we were using a gas which contained 60% of hydrogen. This is a very special situation for Germany, not comparable to other countries, but which gives us today a huge opportunity to use hydrogen, because we were building up our infrastructure with 60% hydrogen introduced. So the materials we were using at that point in time are capable for usage of hydrogen. Second is we have two different gas qualities in our system: high caloric, low caloric. It's dependent on where the source for the natural gas is. So we have, in general, you could say we have two different infrastructures in place. One for the one gas quality and a second one for the other gas quality. And a couple of years ago, in 2014, it was decided that we will get rid of one gas quality. In future, we will only have one gas quality, which is the high caloric gas quality. And therefore, we have the possibility to identify segments of our existing infrastructure which are not serving our customers in future. And if you can identify these certain pipelines, you can take them out of the running system, and you can change from natural gas or transform from natural gas into hydrogen. But this is a situation very special only for Germany, but which gives us today a massive opportunity. So in 2014, we initially started with a basic idea to switch one certain pipeline system into hydrogen. But what we found in 2014, there was no need for hydrogen. The customers, the industry, and also private households we were talking to, they had no need. This changed over the years dramatically. Around 4 years ago, we had a scarce supply of natural gas. Russia-Ukraine conflict was starting. So at that point in time, a lot of companies realized that they need to find a solution to exchange natural gas towards hydrogen. Price was not discussed at that point in time. There was only a need. I immediately need hydrogen instead of natural gas because I cannot be sure that over the next years I will have enough natural gas for my production. So what we did in 2021, we started to do press conferences with in that region. We collected different industry partners, and we applied for funding. And finally, after 3 years of chasing the grants, we got the grants from the German government, from our Ministry of Economics. We started officially with grants in October last year. So what exactly are we doing? And I draw to your focus on the right side on the picture. What you can see here in this picture is in the middle, the existing pipeline system, natural gas, 11 kilometers. It's a high pressure pipeline. This pipeline was taken out of the existing natural gas system. We are switching this pipeline into a hydrogen pipeline. So today, there's no natural gas in the pipeline anymore. It's nitrogen. So we are preparing this pipeline for the transport and also storage of hydrogen. We will use this pipeline as a storage system because we can play with the pressure of the system. And you know that if I have the possibility to use different pressures in my system, I can store gas. What we also will do is we will show how to transform industry. We have 3 different industry customers. On the right side, you can see a customer coming from the automotive industry. They are under huge cost pressure. We have a company coming from the paper industry and the steel company. They all are in need for hydrogen because they are using burner technology. What we also will do is to build up local generation of green hydrogen using 2 different electrolysis capacities, which you can see on the right side. And that's a very, very interesting business case for this company investing in the electrolysis. This is a company which builds up wind farms. And I will also, at the end of my presentation, refer to Ukraine. In Ukraine, there's also the need to build up wind farms because they do not have really central generation of electricity. And the new business model of these companies is that they are building wind farms and not get a connection for millions of euros or dollars to the electricity grid. What they are doing is they build the wind farms and directly connect electrolyzers and produce green hydrogen in order to serve customers in exactly that regional environment. And that is a new business model for these wind farms companies, especially in rural areas where you do not have a strong electricity grid. So we will have a regional generation, and the reason why industry is joining us is because we are offering a more or less risk-free transition from natural gas to hydrogen. And this can be seen in these pictures. It's a simulation. We have a pretty small company, which is a global leader in 3D simulation of burner chambers. And what you can see here is such a kind of burner chamber, including the materials, the geometric metrics. And what they are doing is they are simulating what happens with the burner if I'm not going to use natural gas, but use hydrogen. And they can simulate the flow, they can simulate the flame, they can simulate what happens with the materials regarding the temperatures which occur, and they can see where the temperatures occur. You can see this on these slides here. And this is very essential because these burner technologies are to some extent pretty old, and the manufacturers are not guaranteeing that instead of natural gas, you can use hydrogen. So you need to have a proof. And without interfering the production process of these companies, in the first step, we can do the 3D simulation. In the second step, we have an institute where they can use hydrogen. So we take burners and burner chambers, put it there in this institute, use it with hydrogen, and afterwards, which will be in 2.5 years, Then we start with the actual technology transition process on site in the companies. In addition to that, that's the technology part. But assume that a building wants to have a sustainability report. A building wants to monitor what their emissions are, or how the emissions of CO2 are, or a company doing the sustainability report. It does not matter if they are saying they're using green hydrogen, you need to have a proof. And this is underestimated. You cannot read that in the newspapers. In the newspapers, you can read a lot about electrolysis, green hydrogen, pipelines, whatever. But a very important part is missing somehow, and this is the proof of origin. Along the whole value chain, what we will do is we are using blockchain technology, starting with the first electron produced, handing over then to the molecule, transport, distribution, and then usage, the application. And we involved a company, a certification company, which will do the certification process based on this entire value chain, so that we can hand over a certificate to the company, which they then can use for their sustainability report. And we will have a monitoring system which proves that we are reducing, compared to today, we are reducing CO2. This is valid for hydrogen, but on the other hand, also for CO2. There is a market for CO2. So what we, in addition to the certification of hydrogen and the usage of hydrogen are doing is we will collect the reduced CO2 and bring the CO2 certificate on the market. But therefore also you need data. You need an entire data system which provides to any participant in the market the relevant information. So that's in parallel the aim, what we are following. There's an interesting decision made 2 years ago from our government, because what we quickly found out was that we cannot serve all our customers in Germany with hydrogen if we are willing to produce it only on a regional basis. The reasons for that is that we will never ever have enough capacity for electrolyzers in the regions, and that you have to consider that the price for hydrogen is depending massively, 70%, depending on the electricity price. You all know we have high electricity prices, especially in Germany. So 70% of the hydrogen price is dictated by the electricity price. And if the electricity price is high, then the hydrogen price is high. So this led to the assumption that we will have maybe 1/3 of the service for customers coming from regional generation, and 2/3 has to come from imports. The question is where this hydrogen will come from, and second, how can we provide regions with exactly imported hydrogen? And therefore, the government decided, which you can see on the right side in black, towards a core grid. So the transmission system operators are building up today a core grid, a high-pressure core grid, only for hydrogen, using existing high-pressure pipelines from natural gas, transform that to hydrogen. Also, 1/3 of all the pipelines will be built new for hydrogen. And within the next 5 years, we will have an entire hydrogen grid in Germany, which collects in the big harbors like Rotterdam, Duisburg, Wilhelmshaven. Also at the Eastern Sea, the Northern Sea, collects all the imported hydrogen. Regarding the transport of hydrogen, time being, we only can transport with ships ammonia, and then we will have to use cracking technology, which splits ammonia up, and then the hydrogen, the green hydrogen, will be introduced in the pipeline system. To give you a feeling on the price, in our area, we calculated the price of around €8 per kilo hydrogen. I'm also in discussion and negotiation with Australia, with Middle East, Canada, Scotland. They all have the aim to export ammonia, and there we are talking about €2 per kilo hydrogen at our harbor. €8 on a regional basis compared to €2. There's quite some, well, a gap which we have to fill over the next years, because the industry customers and also the private households are not willing to pay much more only for reduction of CO2, only to reach the climate goals. The discussion I get is, I'm comparing the price of hydrogen in future with the price of natural gas, including the CO2 tax. Of course, CO2 tax will rise. There will be a point where it might be attractive to buy hydrogen, but we're using this project in order to prepare ourselves for the upcoming 5 years. A snapshot on 21 partners in the project, but you should be also have a look at the right bottom side. You will find Friedrich Merz, which might be the new chancellor in Germany. By chance, he's living exactly in that area, and he joins us since 3 years because the government is in negotiation. The new government is in negotiation right now. They will be established within the next few weeks. And I'm happy that relevant politicians are joining our project, because we could introduce a hydrogen strategy into their negotiations based on this project. I like to draw your attention to Ukraine, because we are using this project I showed you and demonstrated in order to have a transfer of technology, a transfer of knowledge into the needs in Ukraine. Consider a situation where in the eastern part, which is more or less the red part here, you can see on that map, consider a situation where we have these massive war activities in the eastern part and less war activities in the western part. A lot of energy infrastructure is destroyed today. Really destroyed, especially if we talk about transmission, the transmission grid. The strategy of Ukraine is to build up on a decentral place on a regional and local place generation, in order to use the energy you're producing exactly at the same spot, so to say. We are heavily involved in negotiations around wind farm projects or wind projects, where the aim is to also introduce electrolysis technology to combine that with the wind farms. The reason for that is that there is no electricity grid existing. So normally you would say, from a business point of view or business case point of view, you would say it's more attractive, or you get more earnings if you directly use the produced electricity, but they cannot do that. So what we support in the project is to transfer the knowledge of electrolyzers, how to build up the pipeline system, and how to transform the existing application technology from natural gas into usage of hydrogen. And this is pretty irrelevant for the heating market and the building segment because they do not have an existing infrastructure regarding electricity. So there's a huge need, and you can see that in entire Ukraine, a lot of buildings are well, not existing anymore. They are destroyed. What Ukraine is doing is they are immediately start to rebuild buildings with a high efficiency decree. And therefore, then they are looking for solutions regarding the heating. Of course, when we have electricity grid available, also a reliable electricity grid, then hydrogen makes no sense. But especially in rural areas, that will be not the case all over the place. So we are looking right now for funding on European level, but also our government has quite some possibilities to share money for these kind of projects. And the aim is twofold with this project. We want to build up wind farms. We want to combine that with electrolyzers. The produced green hydrogen will be, on the one hand, used for the heating segment, for the building segment, also for industry, which are using burner technology. But Ukraine also wants to earn money with that because they urgently need money to build up the economy. So you can see Poland, you can see on the left side Slovakia and Hungary. There is an existing transmission gas grid for natural gas. And we're in discussion with these transmission grid operators that they identify pipelines which can be transferred towards green hydrogen. And the German government then is willing also to have an import from Ukraine produced green hydrogen over Slovakia, Czech Republic, then into Germany in order to bring money back to Ukraine. And there are quite some huge companies in Ukraine who are willing to invest in renewables energy. They are looking for knowledge. They are looking for knowledge also in the field of funding. They have no idea how to get support from the European Commission, for example, or for local or national governments. And they are really looking for support in building up the entire energy infrastructure, which we did start 2 years ago. So an example there is if we have transformers which we are not going to use in future, we find a logistics company taking the transformer, bringing it all to Ukraine, and they use the transformer there in order to build up, which is also relevant for switches, for any kind of stuff you need in the environment of energy infrastructure. And therefore, it's this group here is pretty relevant because we have the connections, we have the know-how, we know how to deal with the commission, we know where funding might be, and we can bring the connections and the contacts we have in order to help Ukraine building up these projects. We are in the process of signing an NDA for one of these projects, where electrolyzers will be used in order to have an export out of Ukraine of green hydrogen to Germany. Maybe that's in a nutshell. Scott, Bob.
Thank you very much. That was
you were talking about 20 minutes. I'm so sorry. I think 1 minute is over or something.
Thank you very much for that. It's actually extremely informative, and it actually raises so many questions. We could spend a couple of hours chatting about it. I'd like to go through a couple of specific things with you. And if anybody wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. The first question is coming at it from a Buildings Action Coalition perspective, and thinking about buildings and the built environment. And I clearly see mobility on your charts, and I clearly see grids and coordination. Is there something that jumps out at you regarding the relevance of hydrogen for what the architects and contractors and builders and building managers are about?
Yeah, if you think about quarters, neighborhoods,
Yeah.
we have quite some areas where new neighborhoods were built, and then you can think about having a central heating system for a neighborhood. And in that case, formerly maybe we were using natural gas. Of course, there's a possibility for heat pumps. It depends on also the existing grid. But in these, especially rural areas where you don't find a strong and reliable electricity grid, hydrogen makes sense because we have all over, especially in our places, all over, we have an existing natural gas infrastructure, which we, from its material point of view, also can switch to hydrogen. We can build up new pipeline infrastructure. We will have a core grid, so which means that we have enough hydrogen available in future. There, hydrogen really makes sense to use hydrogen for new build environments. Second, we have an existing infrastructure with natural gas regarding the heat segment. And we are allowed to use blending, which means introduce hydrogen into the natural gas with a 10%. So I can use 10% of hydrogen to mix it with natural gas. And manufacturers of heating systems say, today, they are selling applications which are able to take 20% of hydrogen. We have projects which show and demonstrate that it's also possible with 30% of hydrogen. So you can talk about the transition phase. So if you want to do something for the climate, if you want to reduce CO2 and you're not able to use 100% green hydrogen, at least you can use blending in order to have the first effect. Because finally, in 2045, there will be no natural gas in the system anymore.
That's the EU. That's not just Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be a desk officer in Portugal, and they went through a system of town gas, which had more complex petrochemical molecules. And when they switched to natural gas, they had a big problem with the seals because the molecules were smaller. When you go to hydrogen, they're getting even smaller.
Yeah.
And I had an argument with a Spaniard once saying that our pipes don't leak natural gas because that's our commercial product. They just weren't monitoring it properly. I would imagine the same issues are going to emerge for hydrogen, less dramatic because methane is a greenhouse gas.
Yeah.
How do you monitor and control such a tiny molecule?
Absolute relevant question. And then we have this special situation in Germany. You were talking about the town gas, which is in Germany we would say Stadtgas, which we are using in the past, which had 60% of hydrogen included. 60%. So we already used materials regarding the size of the molecules which are able to transport hydrogen.
Okay.
So what we did in 2014, and I did it 2 years ago to my project, we had this an institute and TÜV, which is the company doing the certification also for technology, having an investigation on the existing materials in our pipeline system. And 2 times they certified that our materials we were using for the pipeline can be used for hydrogen. But this is only the case in Germany, only there. So there are possibilities that you can introduce also in the existing pipelines a second pipeline in order to have a transport. But anyhow, it depends on the material you are using. And there it's essential to have a good documentation.
Yeah. If I think about the change that you're proposing, and it's massive, more than 90% of hydrogen today comes from fossil fuels. including natural gas and oil
Yeah,
and coal. So already going from 90% to zero is a huge leap. If
absolutely.
I then look at what you described in terms of all of the systems that use hydrogen, so for mobility, it's going to be fuel cells. For heating, it'll be a district heating kind of a system. For industry,
Yeah.
that's a lot of burner tips to be modifying in addition to changing the primary energy. Uh, is there enough capital and technology for that shift to happen? Because it's enormous.
Capital is, I think the scarce source might be capital because technology is available. So
Uh-huh.
electrolyzer technology we have, it's an old established technology, so that's not rocket science. What's missing right now is the size of production we need in order to have the right production in place. Um, Second, the prices will drop also for electrolyzers. The more production I have, the more
Yeah.
demand I have, FIDs and so on, projects, then also the prices will decrease, which will make the hydrogen price more attractive.
Hmm.
But I don't believe that we will cope all the demand of hydrogen in our own country. That's not possible out of my side. There
Okay.
are some other countries who are very attractive, like Spain, like Italy, Australia, Middle East, Canada, where the electricity price is very attractive, is on a low level where you have good conditions in order to generate or produce green electricity. And this in our environment is not the case. So
Okay.
we are depending on imports in
Gotcha.
future.
I've got a gazillion more questions, but Bob's got his hand and he gets priority.
Well, there's no historical evidence for that last assertion, but okay. um, Look, it's going to take me a minute to get this whole question out, but with what's going on over here at the moment in mind, we are at an intersection of multiple crises, and one of them, I think it's fair to say, is a crisis of globalization. And it'll take me a minute to get to hydrogen, but only a minute. And everybody knows the story. Globalization has redistributed manufacturing. It has deindustrialized a lot of the what we'll call the global north. That's left a lot of working class people without a route to the middle class, without even an ability to sort of sustain themselves. It's led to concentrations of wealth, etc. And all of this has kind of is in the course, one wonders, perhaps, of adding up to we've got to countries feeling like they've got to retrench to some sort of national economy because globalization can't work for the broad swaths of their populations.
Yeah.
All right, put that to the left side. Nobody in the last X years has had an idea as to how to generate a growth level in the developed world comparable to the amount of money those governments and those peoples want to spend through the public sector and probably through the private sector too. That's what it means to gut the middle class. One avenue, and it might be the only avenue that I'm conscious of for solving that problem, is new energy. That is to say, the entire economy for the last 150 years has been rooted in a certain notion of what energy is. And what's happened in the last 10 or 15 years is a really very basically different notion of what energy is. So now I get to my question. If this were properly capitalized, would this be a source of new kinds of jobs, new levels of prosperity? Would this change the economic, could this change the economic equation so that you could justify the capitalization on the grounds that it's an investment, not just in generating some power, it's an investment in a whole new economic dynamic? Does it reach that far so we'd have a whole new set of jobs, whole new set of abilities?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's also part of the hydrogen strategy for Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Not only having a look at how to reach climate goals, how to compensate natural gas using hydrogen, but also building up companies and producing electrolyzers. There you need certain stacks, whatever technology, which comes also then from other companies to bring exactly these companies into our country.
Mm-hmm.
This will be new jobs. We will have a transition of the energy system, which also leads to we have to build new parts of the system, which also generates jobs. Um, we will have the possibility also to somehow also export what we can do, knowledge, technology,
Right.
whatever. And for other countries, I think that will be a good situation to also import, from a German point of view, then import natural hydrogen into our system. This opportunity was not given before. Now we have the application, now we have the need, now we have the visibility regarding hydrogen. We know that we will have to use hydrogen in future. There will be no one electric world or 100% electric world in the future.
Mm-hmm.
This discussion is done. So this is a complete new industry segment, if you have a look at this
Can
one.
I? Can I? No,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Scott.
Bob.
Yeah. Well, I'll just, as a wrap up, if we put together your comment that you really began building the infrastructure 60 years ago, that the Russia-Ukraine thing opened up the new possibility, that Ukraine now could be a test bed. You could say something like Germany became a test bed for this whole set of ideas over the last 60 years. And from that standpoint, it's given them an advantage in the new situation. But also, it can be a source of seeds that could be carried around the world
Yeah.
with this stuff. I'll stop talking now, but I'd like to get my hands around that as a project, as something that we ought to communicate and work with the government on,
Well,
etc.
maybe if I can add on one sentence, Bob, fully in
Yeah.
line with what you said, we are really looking for additional partners in order to support these projects in Ukraine. It's not only money, it's not only euros and dollars, it's really resources. It's who knows a logistics company who is capable to for example, we have a power plant. We want to transfer that power plant from Germany into Ukraine. The hardest thing which we have to find is a logistics company doing that job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the power plant itself will not cost €1 Ukraine, but we have a hard time to find somebody who knows somebody else, who knows somebody who's willing or has a company doing the decommissioning and the transportation towards Ukraine. In Ukraine, we have a company who is willing to take the power plant. Only one example. So what we want to do is to build up a strong network on people who have contacts, on people and companies which are willing also to give their support. And this has nothing initially to do with spending €1. It's more spending your brain, spending your contacts, and so on and so on.
Let's
I'd like
put
to
our heads together on that. Now get out of the way, Scott. Go ahead.
I'd like to come in on the heels of what both of you have just been saying, because if you're talking about such a major shift to a hydrogen economy, often I found engineers, and I can say this because I am an engineer, they sometimes focus on the wrong question. And particularly in the climate agenda, everybody's asking, how do I increase the share of renewables? And the real question is actually, how do I reduce global atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases?
Right.
And that opens up a broader set of topics.
Yeah.
Well, if I come back and think about hydrogen, I'll pause. Fukushima accident happened not because of the problem of technology, but because of the cultural philosophy and decision making in the operating company. And what happened was they flooded the cooling water pumps, and they didn't turn the thing off quickly enough, so there wasn't a reaction time. If you're going to be building all of these, not desalination, electrolysis capacity around the place, you're dealing with a world that's going to see a lot of drought, a lot of flooding, a lot of your infrastructure at risk because of the natural environment changing.
Yeah.
And there's more water in the ocean than there is on land,
Yeah.
and offshore wind. So suddenly, if you start thinking about it in a broad, complex, the opportunity set is enormous, but you have to think in those broad terms and not in what can I build in Saarland.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Therefore, we have a university, and we have a cooperation, an official cooperation with the European project to have a look at the entire system. It's not only then Saarland. Saarland shows that it will work.
Right.
Saarland shows where the challenges are and so on, and how to cope with these challenges. But the aim we have is you need different sectors. You need to take into consideration, and maybe you remember we also had in Germany floods, which led to another planning process, another KPIs, how we are planning our infrastructure today than we did years ago, in order to have the view on the entire system. That's what I meant with there are countries where it's much more, also from a climate standpoint, better to produce green electricity than we have the possibility here in our neighborhood. Yeah,
I think you
you're
need to
absolutely
build a
right.
bunch of offshore wind off of Ireland and have a hydrogen pipeline going over to Germany. Is that right, Michael? I think we can ask so many different questions. The ones that the critical challenges to hydrogen that I hear, you talk to somebody, they say the future is electric vehicles. You talk to somebody else, the future is something else. And everybody's got their answer and they're champions for their technology. What is the biggest objection that you encounter that you think is a legitimate argument?
Price.
The price.
The only thing which hinders us time being is the current price. And you can say not the price only for hydrogen, it's the price for electricity, because 70% of the hydrogen price is the electricity price I have to pay. So if we find a solution to go down with the electricity prices, then we will immediately start with a hydrogen market. Then it will come and become attractive. Maybe in addition to that, we are in discussion with the government. We have times where we cannot introduce the produced green electricity in the existing grid.
Yeah.
Because there's no place, no space, no availability for this overproduction.
Right.
Why not use this overproduction for the electrolysis process for free? Because this electricity will else not be produced because we are switching off the plants.
Well, often in electricity, the problem is that demand does this. And if you can provide a load flattening demand, which is what they would love, I know in France, they give municipalities free electricity at nighttime because that's when they want to run their nuclear power stations.
Hooray! That would be great if we have this situation.
Yeah. All right.
And then it becomes attractive.
I'm going to stop there because I know Bob's got a few comments he'd like to close with. I don't know if anybody has a last comment. If not, Bob, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Andreas. That was fabulous.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a great pleasure.
That was really brilliant and like a seed pod of things to follow up on. So thanks so much, Andreas. Let's see. And I'll toss in, since he's giving me precedence, I can hardly avoid it. Great discussion leadership, Scott. So it's been recorded for posterity, as you know. It'll be up on our website shortly. So if you know anybody who wasn't here, but you think they might be interested, spread the word. We will do the same. A quick reminder, our summit is coming up in June 17 to 19. So both yourselves and anybody with whom you have contact, be sure to sign up. We'd like to see you in Enniscorthy. The theme this year is Bridges to a Sustainable Future, Innovation as a Critical Imperative in Turbulent Times. If you're living over here, you can hardly emphasize the phrase turbulent times enough. But I think that I know Scott has a little more praise for Scott. He and Barbara Ann have worked very hard on this agenda, and I think they've come up with something really brilliant. So I'm looking forward to it myself, and I think others will get a lot out of it. Be sure to register. If you need more information, contact Scott or Barbara Ann or myself. Happy to help get you set up. Next webinar will be on April 9th. It'll be at our usual time. And by then, I think everybody will be on daylight savings time. So the relationship between the times will revert to what it was. So please get that on your calendar, and we will send you a notice a week in advance as a reminder. And with that, I think we are ready to wrap it up, and we are exactly on time, 1 o'clock. I'm practicing being German.
Thank you so much, Bob. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys take care of yourselves now. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we are alone. I'm going to stop the recording.